Intermix ratio, page 41. Hey, son, what happened to your backpack? I stuck my homework in the Audi's back seat and got in front. Structural integrity field collapse. Dad laughed at my Star Trek reference, and also because he was finally getting his wish. He had been after me to get a new backpack all semester. Better at school than in the airport. Chip Cusimano wouldn't have been at the airport to rip it open. I explained how it all happened, and Dad started shaking his head about halfway through the story. All you have to do is stand up to him. I did. He didn't listen. He's only doing it because he can tell it's getting to you. I wondered if that's why Dad treated me the way he did, because he could tell he was getting to me. Ever since my bicycle had been removed from active service, I had been taking the bus to school in the morning, and Dad had picked me up in the afternoon to drop me off at Tea Haven. His work schedule was a lot more flexible than Mom's. I think Dad and I got along as well as we did, which wasn't that well, but still, because I didn't see him that often, with school and then work in the evenings, and when I did see him, it was usually for dinner, when Mom or Lala were around to provide a buffer, or for Star Trek, which was sacrosanct. The extra time in the car was throwing off our carefully calibrated intermix ratio. I really did like riding in Dad's Audi, though. I just couldn't tell him that. Dad shrugged and waited for an opening to pull away from the curb. It'll be fine, he said. We'll get you a new one when we get back. And I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding with Chip. Stephen Kellner clearly didn't understand my social status at Chapel Hill High School. He had never had to deal with the Fatty Bulgers and the Cyprian Cusimanos of the world. Stephen Kellner was a paragon of Teutonic masculinity. I made us appointments to get haircuts. He turned right out of the parking lot toward the shops at Fairview Court. I didn't have to work that night. Mr. Apatan had given me the last week off to get ready for our trip, but that's where Dad usually got his haircut. I said, I'm fine. You need a haircut. Dad waved his hand up and down in my direction. This is out of control. I like it like this. It's not even that long. It's nearly as long as your sister's. What kind of example are you setting for her? No, it's not. I mean, maybe it was technically because my head was larger than Lala's, but proportionally my hair was still shorter. You could at least get it trimmed. It's my hair, Dad, I said. Why is it such a big deal to you anyway? Because it's ridiculous. Did you ever think you wouldn't get picked on so much if you weren't so... Dad worked his jaw back and forth. So what, Dad? But he didn't answer. What could he possibly say? I waited in the car while Dad stomped out and got his haircut. I couldn't stand to be in the same place as him. I don't think he could stand to be in the same place as me either. When we got home, he stormed upstairs to his office without another word. I dropped my decommissioned backpack on the kitchen table and filled the kettle from the pitcher of filtered water I kept on the counter. I always used filtered water. It tasted way better than tap water, though Stephen Kellner liked to complain about the redundancy of keeping a pitcher of filtered water when the refrigerator already had a water filter built in. Stephen Kellner complained about everything I liked. In Russia, people use a samovar, a smaller version of Smaug the Voluminous, to heat a bunch of water and then mix it with uber-strong tea from a smaller pot. Persians have adapted that method too. They've adopted it, except most Persians use a large kettle and a smaller pot you can stack on top, like a double boiler. So when the water boiled, I filled our teapot, a stainless steel one that came in a gift set with the kettle, with 3 scoops of our Persian tea blend and 1 sachet of Rose City Earl Grey. Mom called it her secret ingredient. It had enough bergamot in it to scent a teapot twice as large as ours, so whenever she had Persian guests, they always complimented her on how fragrant her tea was. I pulled down the cardamom jar, pulled out 5 pods, and stuck them beneath the jar. Whack, whack, whack. Maybe I was a little more enthusiastic about smashing hell than usual after my fight with Dad. Maybe I was. I dropped the crushed pods into the pot, filled it with water, and waited for it to finish damming. Mom picked up Lala on her way home from work. She went upstairs to pack while I had tea with Lala, which was our tradition when I didn't have to work after school. Lala always took her tea with 3 cubes of sugar and 1 cube of ice, and she always clanged the teaspoon against the sides of her glass teacup as she stirred. Somehow, no matter how hard or how vigorously Lala stirred, she never slopped tea over the sides of her glass or spilled on herself. I didn't know how she did it. I still spill tea on myself at least once a week. Lala took a tentative sip, holding her tea with both hands. Too hot? She smacked her lips. Nope. I didn't understand how Lala could drink lukewarm tea. Taste good? Yeah, she took another slurp. It was nice sharing tea with Lala. I didn't get to see her that much on work nights, but like I said, Mr. Apatan had given me the week off. Despite his frustrating literal-mindedness, Mr. Apatan was a pretty cool boss. It's your first time going home? He had asked. Uh, I thought it was interesting how he had called it home. I wondered why he called it that. What made him call Iran home when he knew I was born and raised in Portland? It's my first time to Iran. It's so important, to see where you come from. Mr. Apatan was born in Manila, and he still went to visit once a year. You have a lot of family there? Yeah, my mom has 2 brothers and her parents. Good. Mr. Apatan had peered at me over the top of his glasses. Have a good trip, Darius. Thanks. Mom ordered pizza for dinner to avoid having a big mess to clean up before we left. It was a thin crust, half pepperoni, half pineapple. Lala loved pineapple on her pizza. Normally, I was thrilled to get pizza. It was pretty much the best dietary indiscretion ever, but I could feel Dad watching me at every bite, flaring his nostrils. First, I had refused to cut my hair, and now I was eating pizza, and there weren't even any vegetables on it. Lala told us how her teacher had Googled pictures of Iran to show the class where Lala was going, which I thought was pretty cool. How about your day, Darius? Mom asked. It was okay. How are your classes? Econ was okay. Gym was okay. I didn't want to get into being called a terrorist. You heard about my backpack. What happened to your backpack? Lala asked. It broke. How? Chip Cusimano broke it when he pulled on it too hard. That was rude. Dad huffed. Mom glared at him. Yeah, I agreed. Maybe if you, Dad began, but Mom cut him off. We'll get you a new one right when we get home, but your dad has a bag you can borrow, right? Dad looked at Mom. It was like they were exchanging telepathic messages. Right, sure. I wasn't sure I wanted to borrow anything of Stephen Kellner's, but I didn't have much choice. We didn't watch The Next Generation that night. There wasn't much time with all the packing. Besides, Star Trek was when we acted like we were a real father and son. Neither of us felt like acting that night. I was folding up my boxers when Mom hollered that Mamu and Babu were on Skype. Mamu, Babu, Mom said, Darius is here. Mom did that sometimes, call me Darius instead of Darius. Darius is the original Persian version of the name Darius. I had made it my priority one goal in life never to let Trent Bolger or any of his soulless minions of orthodoxy learn the Persian pronunciation of my name, which is Dariush. It was an even more imperative goal now that I was D-bag. The opportunities for rhyming were too gruesome to consider. I squeezed myself into frame, looming over Mom's shoulder. Mamu and Babu were squeezed next to each other in 2 seats. Babu sat back a bit, looking at the monitor over the rim of his glasses. Hi, Maman, Mamu said. Her smile looked ready to burst through the screen. I'm so happy to see you soon. Me too. Do you need anything from Portland? No, thank you. Just you come. Okay. Hi, Babu. Hello, Baba, said my grandfather. His voice was gravelly, and his accent was heavier than Mamu's. Soon you will be here. Yeah. Babu blinked at me. He didn't smile, not really, but he didn't frown either. This is how most of my conversations with Babu went. We didn't know how to talk to each other. I studied my grandfather in the monitor. He didn't look any different. He had the same severe eyebrows, the mustache that quivered when he spoke, the distinguished Picard crescent, though his was a bit fluffier since his hair was curly like mine. But according to Mom and Dad, he was dying. I didn't know how to talk about that, about how sad I was, about how bad I felt. And I didn't know how to tell him I was excited to finally meet him either. I mean, you can't just tell your own grandfather, nice to meet you. I had his blood in me, his and Mamu's. They weren't strangers. But I was about to meet them for the first time. My chest started to clench up. I swallowed. I better go finish packing. Babu cleared his throat, and then he said, See you soon, Dariush. Page 49, Olympus Mons. Here's the thing. No one should have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. My phone was set to play the Enterprise's red alert sound as an alarm, but even with the klaxon going off, I wanted to pull the pillow over my head and go back to sleep. But waking up at 3 in the morning wasn't even the worst part. That was waiting for me when I looked in the mirror. My forehead had become host to an alien parasite, the biggest pimple I'd ever had in my entire life. It was glowing red and ominous between my eyebrows like the eye of Sauron, lidless and wreathed in flame. It was so massive, it emitted its own gravitational field. I was certain that if I popped it, the implosion would suck me, my family, and our whole house into a singularity we would never escape. But I did pop it. I couldn't travel with an alien organism inhabiting my face. I swear it smelled like natural gas and pure tea when it ruptured, which was weird and gross. I never drank pure. It was the one category of tea I could never learn to love. It smelled like compost and tasted like week-old sushi no matter how many kinds I tried or how many steepings I did. The pimple bled for a long time. I scrubbed at its remains in the shower with my oil control acne fighting face wash, and my forehead was still stinging as I got dressed. Without my backpack, I had to use one of Dad's messenger bags from work as my carry-on or personal item. Like I said, I didn't understand the point and purpose of messenger bags. The one Dad lent me had his company logo on it, a stylized K and a stylized N made out of scale rules and T-squares and drafting pencils, even though Kellner and Newton had been entirely digital since before I was born. I'd packed my suitcase the night before, but I had left the Kellner and Newton messenger bag for the morning. That was a mistake. Stephen Kellner of Kellner and Newton was not very pleasant at 3:30 in the morning, especially since he was clearly still mad at me. Sorry. Stephen Kellner was clearly still mad at me. Darius, he poked his head in my room. We've got to go in 30 minutes. Why are you still packing? It's just my carry-on. I'll be ready. Don't forget your passport or your meds. I had already checked 5 different times that my passport was in the front pocket of the Kellner and Newton messenger bag, and I'd checked my meds 3 times. I said, I got it, Dad. It was hard to fit books into the messenger bag. My backpack of blessed memory could fit 4 school books in it, but the Kellner and Newton messenger bag was clearly designed for product placement and not storage capacity. I was only able to squeeze 1 book in, sandwiched between the packets of homework I planned to do on the plane. I chose The Lord of the Rings since I hadn't read it in over a year, and it was long enough to last me a good portion of the trip. I also had to fit in a pyramid tin from Rose City Teas, some loose-leaf FTG FOP1 First Flush Darjeeling I had bought as a gift for Mamu. It had this sort of fruity floral scent, but the taste was smooth. FTG FOP means finest tippy golden flowering orange pekoe, which is the highest grade of tea leaf, and the one means the very best of the FTG FOP leaves. Mr. Apatan got mad if I ever mentioned tea grading at Tea Haven. He said it was elitist. I really hoped Mamu would like the tea. Persians are notoriously picky about their tea. Like I said, I had to keep the ingredients in Genmaicha a secret from my own mother, but I couldn't think of anything else that would make a nice enough gift. It was hard to shop for someone I barely knew, even if it was my own grandmother. Darius! Dad bellowed from downstairs. Coming! My sister did not function well at 4:30 in the morning, which is when we pulled into the parking garage at Portland International Airport. I was grateful, grudgingly, for the Kellner and Newton messenger bag because I was able to sling it in front of me and carry my sister piggyback through the airport until we reached security while Mom and Dad pulled our luggage. It was windy and Lala's fine hair kept blowing into my mouth. It smelled like strawberries because of her shampoo, but it did not taste like strawberries at all. You got her? Dad asked. Yeah, I'm good. Okay. Dad glanced at Lala's sleeping face for a moment and then back at me. Thanks, Darius. Sure. The woman in front of us at the TSA security checkpoint was wearing knee-high combat boots. Who wears knee-high combat boots on an airplane? They were black leather with steel toes and acid green laces that ran from ankle to bony kneecap where they ended in neon bunny ears. Combat Boot Lady wore a too large Seattle Seahawks jersey and a pair of sweat shorts, which I felt somehow explained everything. The combat boots were too large for the gray plastic tubs, so Combat Boot Lady tossed them into the conveyor belt behind her bin of less than 3.4 ounces of liquids in a clear plastic bag and stepped through the back scatter X-ray chamber. The TSA agent at the scanner yawned and stretched so hard I thought the buttons would pop off his uniform and fly everywhere. I could smell his coffee breath from the other side of the line. He scratched his nose and nodded at Combat Boot Lady. Lala, I jiggled her legs up and down where they rested in my elbows. It's time to wake up. I'm tired, Lala said, but she let me put her down. She was still in her pajamas except for her little white tennis shoes. My sister had the cleanest white tennis shoes of any 8-year-old ever. I didn't know how she kept them so pristine. We can sleep on the plane, but you have to go through the scanner first. I tossed my Kellner and Newton messenger bag on the conveyor belt, double-checked all my pockets, and waited for Lala to get the all clear so I could take my turn in the scanner. I stood with my arms above my head and had to resist saying, "Energize." I felt like I was on a transporter pad, except no one ever had to hold their hands above their head for 3 seconds on the Enterprise. I was randomly selected for an enhanced screening after that, even though my messenger bag had nothing liquid, gel, or aerosol in it. "Where are you headed?" asked the officer, a burly guy with dark angular eyebrows and a round face, as he ran the little brown paper over my hands. Um, Yazid? I mean, we're flying into Tehran, but my grandfather lives in Yazid." The officer stared at me, still holding my palm with one of his blue-gloved hands, which made me nervous. "He has a brain tumor." "Sorry to hear that." The machine beeped. "Good to go." He threw away the paper swab and looked me over again. "I didn't realize your people did the dot thing, too." The dot thing?" "You know." He tapped his index finger against his forehead, right between his robust eyebrows. I placed a fingertip on the same spot on my own forehead and felt the scabbed over ruins of Olympus Mons, which is what I had decided to name the remains of my pimple. Olympus Mons is the highest peak on Mars. It's a volcano nearly 16 miles high and takes up more square mileage than the entire state of Oregon. Technically, Olympus Mons would have been a better name for the pimple in its unpopped state, since the scab looked more like a crater than a volcano, but it was the best I could do at 3 in the morning. My ears burned. It was a pimple. The officer laughed so hard his face turned red. It was deeply embarrassing.